Louis Quilico was one of the leading operatic baritones of the 20th century. His sudden passing on July 15th, 2000 was a great loss to the musical world. Quilico performed at many of the world's great opera houses: Covent Garden, the Paris Opera, the Bolshoi, and the Vienna Staatsoper, to name only a few. He was a stalwart of the Metropolitan Opera, appearing nearly 300 times over 25 consecutive years. At the Met, he sang under the baton of James Levine, Zubin Mehta, Richard Bonynge and Claudio Abbado, and alongside tenors including Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, John Vickers and José Carreras, and sopranos Joan Sutherland, Renata Tebaldi, Renata Scotto, and Beverly Sills. Louis Quilico was an ideal interpreter of the great Italian and French composers, but it was his defining portrayal of Rigoletto, the hunchbacked jester in Verdi's tragic masterpiece, that won him international acclaim, as well as the nickname Mr. Rigoletto. He sang the role more than 500 times, the last being at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa in September of 1994. After his retirement from the operatic stage in 1998, he continued to perform, touring extensively with his wife, the celebrated pianist Christina Petrowska Quilico. Together they made 4 recordings and a teaching video, and collaborated on the book Mr. Rigoletto in Conversation with Louis Quilico. In this book, Quilico shared his views on singing, on opera, and on his signature role, Rigoletto. He also talked about his own personally devised vocal techniques, sharing them with a new generation of singers. What is missing in the printed version of these conversations is Quilico's own voice and his unique personality. In these recordings, we hear him speak in his own words, with his own voice, unfiltered and unedited. Speaking personally, baritone Louis Quilico, Mr. Rigoletto, in conversation with Christina Petrowska Quilico. In this conversation, Louis' thoughts on opera in translation, on intonation, good and bad, and about some of the hazards he had to negotiate on stage.
What about doing Rigoletto in English? Have you done that?
Yes, I've done it in English for television, CBC. And I have to say one thing: it was really torture, because for a simple reason, the English language, especially for an opera like Rigoletto, it doesn't work, because the thing is, the English language is so how can I say, so anti-dramatic. The expression of the words, it means a lot, but the real expression is not really there, and that was a big problem. And for instance, just to give you an idea, in the aria, it starts Cortigiani, vil razza, dannata, and in English, the words are terrible. I mean, the words are great, but they don't dramatically, musically, they don't mean exactly like the other one, because the translation is court of lepers, debased and corrupted. What are you going to do with this? There's nothing you can do. And very often this is the reason why translation is not so well received, for that reason, because there's something, there's a biting that is disappeared, is not there. And that is the big problem with putting Rigoletto in English, for instance. Even the French one, I hated it. It was absolutely impossible.
There's another opera with a problem, Don Carlo or Don Carlos. Isn't that done in French and in Italian?
Yeah, but you know, Verdi, there was one thing with Verdi. He was a little bit more attentive about his opera, for instance. He was very attentive, for instance, not every one of them. The Rigoletto, appalling. But for instance, the Don Carlos, what happened with the Don Carlos came first in French, not in Italian. If the opera would have been written the opposite, it would have made a big problem. But the funniest thing about it, I think in the whole opera, if I remember well, there might have been maybe one or two notes had it in French, in Italian, for instance. Because the word, it was difficult to have a translation that would correspond to the French one. But I have to say one thing, the whole thing, I've done both. And the French is wonderful, and the Italian is wonderful too.
Which is your first language? French?
French, yes.
And then Italian?
English.
English and then Italian.
Then Italian, yes.
When you memorize, do you memorize the words away from the music, or do you memorize the words with the music?
Memorizing? No, usually I memorize with the music. Because it means something. I will read the words, but what is happening? Reading the words doesn't give me, doesn't anchor with me. The music helps me to keep having a following, and that's why very often. Plus, on top of that, if I go only to my words, what happened between, there's other phrase coming from the tenor, for instance, and what is happening. These phrases, they have to be in it. That's why very often the music takes over to helping to develop and to memorize a work.
Yeah, having worked with you, I know that you sing all the parts.
You have to, because how are you going to, all of a sudden you say to somebody, I hate you, and the person might say, no, I love you, and the opposite. How are you going to have a reaction on that? You understand? It's the opposite of what you have said. You know, that's why it's very difficult, you know.
You have a wonderful memory. You remember these operas for so long, and you can bring them up on a few days' notice. What do you attribute your memory to, and how do you memorize?
I have to say one thing. I don't have the foggiest idea why the memory. I'm going to tell you better than that. I'm going to give you my debut in opera. I mean, my great debut in opera. My great debut in the opera was in New York City Opera, Traviata. I remember very well starting the opera and stating to myself, I'm possibly sure I'm not going to go through, because I would not remember till the end. And I did my first act. It was the second act in reality. I did the second act. It went beautifully, no problem. I said, well, thank God there's one done. Comes the third act. I went through the third act, no problem. Comes the fourth act. I finished the fourth act. I said, oh my God. Well, I think I'm going to sing opera now. No, because for a moment I was very undecided for that reason.
But you find it pretty easy to memorize.
Oh, yes.
That's a gift.
But I have only one problem now. You know, when you're with the Met?
Yeah, no, you talked about that with the prompter.
With the prompter, it's really difficult.
It's almost getting in the way.
Well, it gets in the way. It's because all of a sudden you are so accustomed to it that you expect that it's going to come. And you're not scared that something will happen. But if the prompter is not there sometimes, ooh.
And what about perfect pitch? You always have an unerring pitch. You always sing in tune. I have never heard you really sing out of tune.
I think for me, it's my ears. My ears is like that. I cannot sing false. Once in a while, once in the blue moon, but it's because I don't put enough attention, maybe. But in general, no. Another thing that could be the problem sometimes, it's doing an opera with let's say a soprano, and the soprano goes out of pitch. I remember talking about this, a Rigoletto, for instance, and I remember very well doing, for instance, the part. There's one part that's Avegliado a questo fiore che a te pu, and that I would always ask the prompter, listen to me very carefully, because in the orchestra is boom boom, boom boom. And I don't know if I'm out of pitch, because generally, I would say 75% of the time, the soprano are out of pitch. And that's very dangerous, because at that point, you are taking your note from the soprano. And I remember, I'm sorry if I'm calling you again, I remember that I was doing Traviata once with the soprano at the Met, and it was a broadcast. And I asked Joan, listen to me at every entrance and show me if I'm right on pitch.
That's Joan Dorneman.
Joan Donovan, yes, the prompter. And the thing is, it was terrible, because she was always like a quarter of a tone lower, or sometimes half a tone lower, and you know what it is? Then all of a sudden you start to sing, and the orchestra walks in, and you're the one who's out of pitch. I'll tell you one thing, it was terrible.
With some of the young singers that we hear singing flat, is it the technique or is it the ears?
I think it's a combination of two. I think most of the time they don't exactly know that their technique. They don't know how to use it. They don't know how to feel it. And for instance, vocally, it could be a problem vocally too. Ears, maybe, but I'm not sure about that. I'm always reticent to accuse the ears. Mm-hmm. Some people, yes, they do have problem. Like, for instance, it was very funny, because I remember in London, there was a woman, you would play her a note on the piano, and she would sing always a third. Mm. She couldn't sing that note. And you know something funny? She was in the chorus. But I don't know how she was managing. She was managing very beautifully. She was in the chorus at Covent Garden for something like about 15 years, something like that, if it's not more.
What about this gift of certain tenors to hit the high C's? Can you tell me, do baritones have the same?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing, that has only to deal with your technique. If your technique is good, usually you'll be able to hit it. But you see, the principally what is happening is when a young artist prepare themselves, for instance, they would be satisfied to say, well, I've got a high C, that's what I need in my life, and they're going to go up to the high C, and they stop there. Me, what I always did, I always sang about 5-6 notes above the stuff that I needed. Like I needed the A natural. Well, what do you think I did? I went to an F above high C. But I did not need that. And that is the reason that I feel very often they don't go to the complete potential of their voice.
Can tenors have a career without a high C?
I would say that today it's arrived at the point that they all have a career without the high C. Because the pitch went up so high. Oh, who else I was talking lately? In one country where the pitch is 4
48.
457.
Vienna?
No, in one of the behind the Iron Curtain, and it's terrible because when you start to sing, you're practically a tone higher.
So this is not a myth about orchestras or pianos being tuned too high.
Oh no. Well, I have to say one thing. People like Karajan, for instance, they always wanted to have brilliance in the orchestra. But the thing is, we are human. There's so much you can do with the vocal cord. You want to tax that more? Sorry to say it. It's very difficult for that reason, because being human, it's not only the matter of how can I say to do it, but all of a sudden you are taxing something that should not be overtaxed. What I mean by this, to give that kind of a pitch, you have to tense a little bit more the chord as usual. Now, what is happening? That usually you can sing at 420 is about what is the right pitch. Then all of a sudden you go up to 450. No, you have a majority. It's not much, but that is enough to tense the chord a little bit more. Now, what is happening? That you are singing for one performance here. Now you sing it. Let's put it in a 1 inch for the chord. Now the chords are measured 1 inch. Now you go and sing Vienna. The chords are not 1 inch anymore. They're 1 inch and 1/8, or 1 inch and 1/16. And then the following performance, you go back to 1 inch. You see what you're doing with the chord, and that is the danger. People, because it's like I said, you're taxing something of your body that cannot be taxed at any moment like this. No, it is not.
You mentioned 420. Do you mean 420 or 440?
Well, sometimes it's 420, 440. It depends.
What would be the ideal for singers?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. It's depends on the singers. Lately, I've heard that 420 would be the best thing. Some other place it's 440.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure. I never asked, but I'm not sure. I think the Met is 420. They don't want to have completed that brilliance.
And yet the Met Orchestra sounds wonderful under James Levine. So.
It sounds good. I don't think the brilliancy of the instrument made a difference in the orchestra. I don't think so. Play lively, play music the way it's supposed to be played. But sometimes I say to myself, I'm not talking about James Levine or anything like that, but some of the conductor, sometimes they hold a stick in their hand. That stick is more human than they are. And that is the thing that I feel very often it's missing.
Just to backtrack to Rigoletto, what is this story about you having your own costume?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing. I don't know exactly how can I say this. It's like having a pair of glasses. You have to be comfortable when you do a Rigoletto. You have to be so comfortable, and the most important thing is to be comfortable physically. That means it will bring you even to be mentally. Because physically, if you got something that is disturbing you, like just to give you an idea, I was doing Roberto Devreux at the City Opera, and we did all the rehearsal. Everything was fine. I was no problem whatsoever. All of a sudden comes the dress rehearsal. Put the costume here. Put the costume there. All of a sudden, I was having having problem with my first aria. I said, I don't know. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I'm not in good shape. Oh, okay. All of a sudden comes the first performance. I went through hell. It came out beautifully, but it was very difficult. Okay. comes the second performance. Between the first and the second performance, all of a sudden I was vocalizing in my dressing room. I was vocalizing, and all of a sudden that was before I put the costume on, you know. And I'm doing vocalize, and this is what I feel. Then all of a sudden they put the costume, but in the costume there was a tremendous, like a fur collar, but large fur collar. But before the collar came on me, I had the costume, and that was like a cape that I used to put on. And all of a sudden, this is what it gives. Then all of a sudden they put the cape with the fur. I said, oh, wait a minute. Take off the coat. Put the coat. I said, oh my God. I could not absorb the voice. Everything was absorbed by the fur. All of a sudden I called the stage, the dresser, and I says, you know what we're going to do with this? He says, what? I said, you're going to put it on the side. Oh, he says, Tito Capobianco will not accept it. I says, you do me a favor. You tell him to come here, put the costume, and go and sing the first act. I never put it. After that was it. What I did, I took the coat, the coat, it was a coat, of the second and the third act, and that's the one I wear instead. The other one was very beautiful, but God, it was killing my voice. I said, no way.
Before we stop for now, all right, how about some more Rigoletto experiences? What about Paris?
Well, before I talk about Paris, I have to say, for instance, in the United States, it came at the point where I was practically the only one who was doing Rigoletto all over the States. And what happened at that point, that a lot of producers knew exactly my kind of production, what I wanted to do, or things like that. And they would call me and they would say, Louis, instead of coming now, why don't you come 1 week later, something like that? Because I remember very well, one producer said, listen, Louis, your Rigoletto is so, in a certain way, in my mind, so perfect that I don't want to add anything to it. I mean, I know exactly what you do, and I want to have everybody around you to be able to serve what you're doing. And that, I have to say one thing, I don't take that as a compliment, but except one thing, it proved one thing, that some people who are well aware of the people that they're working with give to these people what they really need to do on the stage.
So most stage directors should listen to the opera singers who have had a lot of experience doing the productions, instead of, as is today, too much emphasis is given to the stage director, the production, and maybe one sentence on the singers, who are the ones that have to do.
Well, I don't want to be nasty. I don't want to say nothing that will be taken the wrong way. But except one thing, it comes at the point right now when you all of a sudden you start to read about a review or anything like that. Very often, the performance is incredible because of the director and the conductor, and the artist, well, they've been part of it. And for me, it's the opposite. If the performance is extraordinary, it's because you got good people on the stage, and that's what makes the production, or more or less the producer himself. And if the producer has the intelligence to really want to work with people, at that point, that's where it becomes a masterpiece.
What about Visconti?
Well, Visconti, I was doing an opera. I was invited to do an opera. It was not Rigoletto, but it was an opera that I was doing in Spoleto. And for me, it was the first time, and actually, we had to work with what it was asked of us, especially a man like Visconti. Well, you know that he's incredible and all that stuff. But except one thing, a big problem has risen at that moment, is that I was allergic to paint. I'm still allergic to paint or perfume or anything like that. But the thing is, I did not realize till at the dress rehearsal, they decided, after looking at the production, that on the table, on the stage, there was a table. And they decided that that table did not look exactly right. It needed more glamorous dressing and all that. And they put a big tablecloth on it for the premiere. And one thing they did, they painted, there was a frill of gold all around the table, a tablecloth, at the bottom of the tablecloth. And they painted it. And what happened, I was allergic to paint. And all of a sudden, I walked on the stage when came the moment of the famous table. And all of a sudden, I started to feel there was something disturbing me. Till I really realized that I was losing my voice. And it's so funny because at the end of the act, the first man I met coming out of the stage was Visconti. And I looked at him right in his face, and I was so mad I didn't care who it was. God could have been there, would have said exactly. I says, who is the lousy dog that ever put that tablecloth on the table? And I knew he was the one responsible for it. But after that it passed, what can you do? But it was a real bad moment, I have to say.
Tell me about allergies in singers.
Well, the big problem with the singers, we don't exactly realize how much the throat is sensitive. Everybody in this world, try to touch your eyes. You cannot touch it because it's very sensitive. The throat is exactly the same thing. Naturally, being it's a thing that we don't see, and only if you have feeling for it, it will indicate to you if you got a problem or not. And very often, allergy, and I would say it's not only allergy of singers. I think in life in general, we talk about people who are allergic. They're allergic to dust. They're allergic to penicillin. You're allergic to all kind of things. But one thing we're never going to say that people are allergic to perfume. And that's for me today, that's one of the greatest things that people who are allergic should be very careful, because just the fume of the perfume, the fume of the perfume, can really get you sick. And me, I know for a fact, when there's somebody around me with a perfume, I will go and tell them. Naturally, I am very delicate about it because I know how people are so touchy about their smell or anything like that. And I come and I ask very, very delicately, please, would it be possible for you not to wear your perfume because I'm allergic? And for instance, I was doing an opera called William Tell at Carreras. And all of a sudden, during the rehearsal, came a lady with a tremendous perfume. The fume of that perfume was so incredible that it overpowered me. And I did like I always did. I walked to her slowly, and I said, "Excuse me, madam. I would like you to know that I am allergic to perfume. And is it possible for you not to wear this kind of perfume?" And the famous lady it was not a famous lady I'm talking about, but she was very nasty about it. She says, "Listen, this is a free country and I'll wear it." I said, "Sister, I'm going to tell you one thing. In this opera, you are nothing. In this opera, I'm everything. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing. You want to get fired?" And she did not answer. I says, "Anyway, tomorrow morning, we have the dress rehearsal and tomorrow night we have the performance. You do me a favor. When you're going to walk in this place, you come to me and let yourself smell." Naturally, that was a tremendous cold approach to tell her, but I didn't give a hoot at that point. Because if you ask them very delicately and they're very nice about it, then good. But this one really took it the wrong way. The next morning, all of a sudden, I was sitting on the stage, and all of a sudden she walked in. I looked at her, she looked at me, she turns around to go out. All of a sudden, I call her. There was the whole orchestra, there was a chorus. I was very nasty, I have to say. But I don't care, because she was so nasty, do not want to understand I was allergic. I said, "Hey, sister, would you come here?" And she turns around. I says, "Yeah, you." And I show her with my finger. I says, "Come here, I want to smell you." Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden she came on the stage. Me, I wouldn't have walked, but her, she walked towards me. And all of a sudden, I started to smell her from her head to her feet. And she did not wear the perfume. I said, "Thank you very much. We can keep on doing the performance." That was one of the allergy. Another one that I had, for instance, something that related to Visconti, Thomas Shippers was taking a bath in Cologne water. And when I was doing the Duca d'Alba in Spoleto, he had let me. He wanted me to use his studio if I had some study to do, and he let me use the studio. And I used to go in the studio, but his studio smelled so tremendously of the Cologne water, and it was a nice smell. But every time I finished my rehearsal there, I used to come out, and I was out of my wits, because I used to lose my voice. Anyway, all of a sudden, another thing that happened before this, still in Spoleto, all of a sudden I was doing a performance, and being allergic to paint, all of a sudden one Sunday I came to the theater in the afternoon, and all of a sudden right at the door of my dressing room, there was about 15-20 buckets of paint right there, some of them open, some other, and it smelled. And I got so mad that I called the stage manager, and I says, "Please clear this up." He says, "Don't worry, Louis, we'll have it clear for tonight." I came that night, and all the paint was there. I tell you one thing, I started to scream and make a stink, and this and that and this and that. Finally, the manager of the outfit was a woman. She walked in and she says, "What's the matter?" I says, "I want these bucks out of the theater. I don't want them around my room. I said it this afternoon, they're still there." She said, "Oh, you singers, you're so difficult." I grabbed her and I said, "Listen, sister, you want to be here in half an hour or you want to be dead? Which one you want?" I says, "You take off these bucks of these kind of paint, because I'm allergic to it," and I throw it out. And exactly 5 minutes later, the box of paint were all out. And apparently, my big blow up went around the city in Spoleto. And the next day, I was the Duca d'Alba in the opera. And everywhere I was walking, people would mention me not as Mr. Quilico, but as Duca Quilico. I was the Duca all of a sudden. But another experience again with the famous Duca d'Alba, we had to do it here in New York, in Carnegie Hall. And all of a sudden, Carnegie Hall, and we had to do it in Philadelphia. And there was one more concert to do, I don't remember exactly, here in New York. We go to Philadelphia, and we get ready to do the concert. And just about 5 minutes before the performance, I go in the dressing room of the conductor, Thomas Shippers. I was in his dressing room maybe 2 minutes. I wish him best of luck. Then, from his dressing room to the stage, it was a walk, I would say about 25 feet. I did that walk, 25 feet. The moment I arrived on the stage, it's like somebody would have taken a pin, a dagger, and put it the way you want it, right here at my neck, and it went straight to my brains. I had a sharp pain. Zap. I didn't bother. It didn't bother me because, I didn't know what it was. And all of a sudden I started to sing the performance, and more I was going during the performance, more I was going, more I was losing my voice. And finally, we finished the performance. And on my way back from Philadelphia, I said to somebody, I think I'm allergic to the conductor.